welcome back to the main stage at Demo Day. We're continuing on with our lightning round of lightning demos, and this time we're doing something a little bit different. We're going to start to look at cultural insights. So I'd like to welcome Michael Hubbard, who's co-founder and CEO of Nichefire in. Hi, Michael.
Hi, how's it going?
Good, thank you. The sun is finally shining in Glasgow, so we're getting better. But I am going to hand over to you for this. Now, I think I'm writing saying this. So with this one, we know we're all used to writing Boolean queries and things like that. We don't need to bother with that with your solution, do we, Michael? Or have I got that wrong?
Oh, you don't need to bother with that at all.
There we go. So whoever, if you don't like to write Boolean query and want to have some cultural insight, then please pay attention to this session. Michael, I'll pop back in for any questions the audience has at the end of the session. Have a good one.
All right, thank you so much. Again, here, let me, there we go. All right. Again, I'm Michael Howard. I am the CEO and founder of Nichefire. Now, I only have a brief time with you all today, so I'll be prioritizing more or less the benefits of what we do with some examples, but I highly encourage you all to visit our booth or visit our website for an in-depth personalized demo or a consultation. But I also welcome any connections on LinkedIn. This QR code actually goes directly to my LinkedIn, so please feel free to connect. Let's get started. So today, I want to talk about trends. And as practitioners, we have a few ways of looking at them. I personally love this diagram that I'm showing right now, and I want to credit our friend Danny Gardner over at GSK for this, but it provides a great way to visualize the different levels of trends that we look at. So let's take a look at like these top two sections here. This top part here topic are trends that pertain to our brands and our products, while below that is more category, which pertain to our market and our industry. For instance, looking at competitors, and that sort of things. And social listening is doing a great job at exploring these things. But where it gets very tricky is when we are evaluating the forces that can impact our business and customers outside of what we normally look at. And these are trends that can lead us to new innovations in products, new ways to mitigate risk, among other examples there. We call these cultural trends. And when it comes to evaluating cultural trends, we know it can be overwhelming. And no matter the amount of data there's still a lot of analysis needed to make sound business decisions, because you need fast, actual insight and foresight, because more data does not necessarily mean better decisions, but better speed to insight does. And with tools like social listening, it can be hard to do that sometimes, especially if you don't know the consumer, political, or economic topics to watch for in advance. But with consultants, it can be very expensive and maybe not very flexible to what you need. But we've changed that. Meet Trendfire. It recognizes and presents emerging insights and predicts their trajectory as they happen, so you can be proactive. Trendfire helps you turn unknown unknowns into actionable insight, because you don't know what you don't know. And tools like social listening require an initial understanding of what to research, and even then they're a bit more reactive. While Trendfire's patent-pending data cross-referencing system will automatically identify and present emerging trends across numerous online sources, including sources like social data, news and media, search, web traffic, and more. But also helps predict the impact of those trends before they happen. Because tomorrow's leading brands will be agile, and they're going to be able to capitalize on rapid changes in political, economic, and consumer trends. Unfortunately, trends are capricious and they're brutal to accurately forecast with only quantitative variables. So Trendfire's trend prediction evaluation system uses cutting-edge AI to marry qualitative information with quantitative data sets to backtest and accurately predict trends across more than 40 cultural categories, and looks over 6 months into the future. And then on top of that, it helps you capitalize on opportunities faster and also helps you reduce your risks. So real time is not really fast enough, especially when it comes to jumping on trends that can drive revenue, drive brand reputation, among other KPIs. But Trendfire integrates into any major business intelligence solution as well, and uses advanced semantic clustering and natural language generation to rapidly summarize and report on mountains of data so you can easily spot those opportunities. So how does it work? First, the Trendfire platform syndicates and cross-references emerging trends from our network of data partners and API tabs. So that trend data is segmented into 3 data type buckets. The first is interest data, And these are more or less the data sets that indicate deliberate interest in topics. Imagine search queries, web traffic information, that sort of thing that we're driving in to build up that bucket. Then we also have engagement data, which are the data sets that are indicating discourse between consumers and brands, like what you would see on social media, forums, message boards. And then there's consumption data, which are more or less what we would call our one-way street data sets that influence public opinion, things like news, publications, influencers, and that sort of thing. So next, our platform will evaluate the trajectory of each of these trends and funnel them through a proprietary trend evaluation framework. This identifies emotional characteristics, the cultural context, influences, platform patterns, and more in that trend. And then that qualitative and quantitative evaluation of those trends are then compared against and back tested against a database of similar trends to identify an ideal trajectory. And that prediction output is created and fed into a user-friendly interface or API integration into a business intelligence tool of your choice. But how do Trendfire's predictions stand among the rest? To start, let's look at trend predictions are typically viewed at the moment. Oftentimes, the way we approach predictions is very quantitative. And this approach is great for single variable patterns, such as maybe widget production, sales forecasts. However, we're talking about cultural trends here. There's a lot of subjective patterns that are often impacted by human emotion and our environment. But these quant-focused approaches have a bit of limitation because there are numerous variables involved here that are informed by qualitative data as well. And not to mention that you also need extensive historical data for these types of quantitative models. And so it can make it a bit difficult to project even short-term trends and black swan events. So take this graph, for instance. This is showing the Wikipedia activity around Afghanistan when the US withdrew from Afghanistan last August. That orange line there is the observed values for the traffic pattern on that site, while the blue line is the predicted values for that. And as you can see, that prediction was not picked up at all. And no amount of historical data would have been able to predict that, unless you had maybe alternative examples, which is still difficult because in many of these instances, it can be quite unique in terms of that pattern. And so this is because much of the qualitative data coming from the voice of the consumer is very diverse, and those diverse inputs for each trend makes a unique pattern. And so typically when we're looking at conversational data, we can see a few subjective characteristics. So for instance, things like emotional triggers. So these are things looking at sentiment, the expressiveness and other emotional measurements that we can define in this data. Then there's cultural context, which are more or less the topics in, say, pop culture or the economy, societal topics, and more that we can identify. And then there's authority and influences. So what sort of publications, media, influences are impacting the discourse and decisions of consumers? And lastly, the platform narrative, because those platforms themselves are indicative of the trend's trajectory and pattern, and it can vary from platform to platform as well. And so by codifying these characteristics, we're able to document the qualitative development of a trend. And so the graph I'm going to show here is an instance in which we were documenting the development of the platform trend for the show Squid Game that was launched on Netflix last September. As you can see, that trend started on Twitter because individuals would watch the show and then they would talk about it. And then you'd see that people have witnessed that sort of conversation. Then they'll go and research that on Google, on Wikipedia, research it on review sites and forums, and then they will watch it and then they'll talk about it. And that cycle continues again for the next week. And then by the week after that, news and media picks it up. It's broadcasted to a larger audience to the point where that trend is present on all channels. So the Trendfire platform captures this for, in addition to the platform trend, captures this for cultural context, those emotional characteristics, and more to help brands understand the right opportunities and the right in risks with cultural trends. So for instance, imagine being the retailer first to market with the Squid Game Halloween costumes or something like that as a result of this sort of analysis. It's a real solid revenue opportunity if you're looking at it from that sort of angle. And so when we apply qualitative and quantitative data to our prediction models, we can get incredibly accurate outputs. So this graph, for instance, shows the observed values of web traffic patterns for Bitcoin. That's documented in orange, and the time period was from 2021. But while the blue line will represent our prediction using our qualitative and quantitative methods. And as you can see, that we overlaid our prediction with observed values over time and got incredibly accurate results, even with trend patterns as volatile as cryptocurrencies. And so imagine having that sort of power when making investment decisions, or say you're the brand that's evaluating whether or not to pursue a certain coffee trend or another thing for your product line. But without further ado, I really appreciate your time. Again, please check out our booth and website. Happy to schedule any in-depth demos, reports, or consultations. If you have any questions or want to learn more, please reach out to me. You can reach me via email. It's on the page, and that LinkedIn. That's the QR code right there. Enjoy the rest of demo day.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you. We've got one question that's come in very, very quickly. How are trends surfaced in the first place is what Hendrik is asking you. Do you have any info you can share on that?
Great question there. So we actually have two approaches to doing that. One, we have a default processing model that more or less will evaluate top traffic patterns from more or less numerous social sites, say Twitter, where we can actually identify which topics are trending, and we're able to identify and evaluate those in the first place. But then we're also able to bring in those sort of patterns for things like Wikipedia, for Google and Bing search, among other traffic patterns that allow us to kind of evaluate, hey, first, here are the areas that are seeing a lot of high traffic there. Let's cross-reference them, through that system to identify which trends can we validate there. And then on the other end of that too is that if there's a specific area where, say if you're interested in exploring, I don't know, parenting topics or mom topics and that sort of mommy blogger topics or something like that, we have what we call a strategic processing model, where you would first structure what we call initial parameters for that. So think of it like I find trends within these types of accounts or in these types of keywords or in this type of model, and more or less identify what is trending and emerging within those parameters for you. I'd be happy to kind of go in more detail on that, but I don't want to take too much more of your time.
Yes, because we have we're very fast on these sessions. But Michael, thank you so much. You've been getting all the love in the chat. So please, everybody, once we've got into the next break, pop over to the expo, which you can get on the left-hand side of your screen, and do get in contact with Michael and the team, and they'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions or to provide you with a private demo. But Michael, thank you so much. You've certainly lit up the chat there and everyone's imagination. Thanks very much for your time today. Thanks, everyone. I'll see you on the main stage for our next session in a few moments. Thank you.